Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Ryan Stewart. I'm a planner and project manager with Fairfax County, and I want to thank you for being here tonight for our Government Center Visioning Open House. Before we start, just a few quick housekeeping notes. Number one, tonight's meeting is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube and the county website for anyone who could not attend it in person. I'm joined tonight by county staff, representatives of the Board of Supervisors, and our consultants from Torty Gallis and Partners. Planning Commissioner Mary Cortina of the Braddock District would like to say a few words. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks so much for having this open house. I just wanted to welcome everyone here. We're here to listen, and I thank the staff in the Department of Planning as well as their partners from TG&P, the consultants in presenting this visioning for the Government Center. Back when we went through the public process for the affordable housing on the Government Center, we told the community that we would want to hear from them if any other plans were made for this area. We knew this visioning was coming up, and so I thank you for that opportunity. This is not the only opportunity, but I think it's important to get early feedback, so we're here to listen. And just want to welcome everyone and all the staff from the county for being here tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mary. And as Mary mentioned, tonight's workshop is really about hearing from you. The people who work here, visit here, live nearby, or rely on services, programs, or other activities that the Government Center provides. We'll begin with a short presentation and then move into a moderated discussion. We'd ask that you please hold any questions until the end so we can get through the material, but please jot them down because we will want to hear them later. And if you would like to, you can always use the chat feature in the Zoom software, and we'll be monitoring that throughout the evening and responding there as we do in-person questions as well. After tonight, all the meeting materials, whether that's the slides, the recording, any transcripts, those will all be available on our project's website, which I'll share here shortly. And the other thing to mention is, as Mary said, this is really not the only opportunity to share your feedback and your thoughts. We really want to be able to hear from you. Here we go. So, like I mentioned, we have the participation tonight, and then we also have an online survey that has we've set that up on our publicinput.com platform. You'll see the concepts and the ideas that we'll share tonight. It's a great way to provide your own comments, tell us what you like and what you dislike, but also be able to see how the community is responding and really kind of starting that dialogue around these various concepts. If you'd like to keep informed on the project, please visit that survey site there as well, and we'll be happy to sign you up for our mailing list. We don't share your information. It's strictly for purposes of this project and keeping informed. If you'd like to have a more traditional conversation, please feel free to contact me. Here's my contact information. Email or phone is perfectly fine. And then, as I mentioned, we have the project website here down at the bottom. This is really our central hub for any type of project background or meeting materials. That includes any past meetings that we've had as well. So just in the way of some background to set the stage on this project, the Government Center sits within the Fairfax Center area. It's an area of the county that the county envisions is a more urban, walkable, and mixed-use community that's really centered around a future transit station near Fairfax Corner and Fair Oaks Mall. That transit station may be decades away, but the time to plan for that is now, even maybe 40 years in the future. But to that end, as part of this study, the county has been advised by a community task force put together from members of the Planning Commission and various members of the community, and they're essentially studying how this area needs to change in the coming years prior to that transit station's arrival and what it might take to have that transit established. And so the Government Center is a part of that wider study. And as Mary mentioned, that when the new housing was proposed at the Government Center, it's now under construction. The Board of Supervisors really saw the need to update the campus's 1986 master plan. The idea here is that this new plan would provide a guide for future development and to be able to enhance county services on the campus and align with broader county priorities like equity, housing, the environment, community health, and providing those high quality services that our county residents have really come to rely on and expect. We've been specifically asked to look into how the surface parking lots at the government center can be repurposed and how future development would fit within the overall context of the Fairfax Center area. And then since 2022, we've worked with a county staff leadership committee and our consultant team to really gather ideas from the Board of Supervisors, listen to our community task force, and also get feedback and ideas from residents just like you. And you may recall that we did some online surveys and some outreach to our community members about, I believe that was last summer, summer before this one. And since that time, we've really taken time to understand what the community wants to see from the government center. And tonight we're ready to share some ideas for development that will be shaped by the background and the feedback that we've heard to date. Some of the concepts you'll see, we'll get kind of into some details, but that's for discussion purposes. This process isn't really about creating a single specific blueprint for the campus. It's about creating a flexible framework that reflects the county's needs and desires, and it will guide decisions for years to come. But again, so thank you for being here tonight. Number one, we really look forward to hearing from you. And for now, I'll turn it over to Tim Azork with Torty Gallis and Partners. He's going to go over the main presentation, and then we'll pick it back up with the Q&A after that. Hi, Tim.
Hi, Ryan. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you to everyone who came out, or I guess did not come out tonight, but stayed at home tonight. Thank you very much. You may be able to tell from my voice, I'm fighting a little bit of a cold now, so I'm grateful that we're doing this remote. And if I need to mute myself and cough, I might have to do that during the presentation. My name is Timothy Zork. I'm a planner and urban designer with Torty Gallis and Partners. We are a planning and architecture firm headquartered in Washington, D.C., but do a lot of work all over. Also joining me on the call tonight is the head of our planning and urban design group, Erica Lestia. And if you want to say anything, or okay,
no, I'll just say hello. I'll say that this is a wonderful project. It's such an important project because it really looks at the future and leveraging the government center property and seeing what it can really become in the future as an asset, really, for not just the folks that work here, but all the people that live in the county and around the project.
So I will share my screen and start talking. As Ryan mentioned, we're going to be going over some initial concepts for the site for the Fairfax Government Center. Really the areas that we're looking at. Ryan mentioned, we've been tasked with looking at sort of the undeveloped parts of the property. As you can see here on the map, there are sort of the parking lots outlined in blue. And also we've drawn some blue boxes, some outlines behind the government center. Part of the original 1980s master plan that Ryan mentioned was an idea that sort of the C shape of the government center would continue and go out. And so, we are also considering that in a couple of the plans for what we might do. But really the focus is really sort of on the surface parking lots set up, kind of the potential area that we're going to be looking at. So as Ryan mentioned, we've been working on this project for a while. Right now, we are in the engagement phase, talking with you, among other people. But it really started with a background review of existing plans, site analysis, looking at other government centers as benchmarks to see how it's been handled in other places, and sort of a typological study of government centers. Had meetings with elected officials, other stakeholders, sort of took all those ideas and really used that to develop sort of an overall vision for the site. And then looking at it sort of in three distinct ways, three different scenarios that sort of each have a set of goals and principles that go along with them. And then those are eventually going to be refined through the feedback process into a final recommendation for what we're going to suggest on the site. We're going to go through the analysis and existing conditions quickly, but I think there are a few important things to talk about. This is the site here. I don't know if you can see my hand with a glowing red dot. the existing government center here, kind of the C-shaped building. Topographically, there's some interesting things. It really is the highest spot is sort of out in front of the government center in the open space, and then it slopes down to both sides. As you can see, there are then natural areas, stream valleys, and other floodplain and resource protection areas sort of that go around both sides of the government center property, running back into the woods and connecting on into a larger regional network of open space and water. There are some existing trails and sidewalks on site. And then up here at the corner is the new building that is currently under construction. Looking at kind of zooming out a little bit at some land use context, this blue color is our public facilities. So that is the existing government center building and its campus on both sides of the government center parkway. Also, there's a school down to the south. Sort of the big things that you see when you look at sort of the surrounding land use context, a lot of green space that sort of comes in and surrounds the site, which is really important. A lot of residential uses that surround it. A mix of medium density and high density residential. And then to the north, along the 66 corridor is where there is more commercial and mixed use. So Fairfax Corner, just on the north side of Monument Drive, and then the Fair Oaks Mall on the other side of 66. We're indicating here with the M, the future metro station that, I think is still a good ways out, but something that we are planning around kind of what defines the boundaries of what we might consider to be transit oriented or transit supportive development with this half-mile radius. Access, I mean, sort of the largest major road, of course, is Route 66. There's no direct access to the campus. You can get from the express lanes off onto Monument Drive, which takes you past the campus, but otherwise it's a bit of a circuitous route coming through a lot of on-ramps, off-ramps, or coming down from the south or coming all the way around the north. Access to the site, a lot of access points off of Government Center Parkway, but mainly separated from the north, from Fairfax Corner and Monument Drive by the stream valley. Looking at existing pedestrian and bicycle facilities, what's shown here in yellow, those are off-street trails and paths. And then what you see in blue is on-street trails and bike lanes. So there is a pretty good amount of on-site trails and also, off-site bike facilities. But what we do see when we look at this map is there are some gaps, right? So there'll be bike lanes, then just kind of stop. Or there is a trail running along the side of 29 that, kind of just stops and there's a big blank area until it starts up again. And so some of the things that when we notice looking at, the connections and the trails are, there's pretty good service, but there are gaps that should be filled in. So really, as Ryan mentioned, the parking lots are sort of the main focus of the areas that we're looking at studying. And so one of the first things we looked at was, how much parking is there and sort of how much parking is needed. It's important to note that when we're talking about how much parking is required, this is based on sort of zoning code requirements. So, part of this project was not doing a parking study where we went out and measured how many spaces were being utilized. This is just based on the requirements that Fairfax County has for the number of parking spaces for each use that is on site. So that's how we calculated the required parking. Because the new housing project is currently under construction, we excluded this area from the calculations. And so that means, we did not count any of the surface parking spaces that have been displaced in our totals. And we're not counting any of the parking needs from the building that's still under construction. It has its own parking that is provided underneath it in a podium. So that is excluded. And then we also are excluding from the calculations the public safety building. This is a private or a secured garage. So, we're not suggesting that be included in sort of the total amount of publicly available parking. There is also parking underneath the existing government center, which is for government employees only. And we are suggesting that would continue to be for government employees only. But it may be arranged in a different way. Right now there are some reserved parking, or only certain people are allowed to park there, even if you are a government center employee. So, we're looking at sort of what exactly that means. So it would stay as parking for government center employees, but may be opened up in terms of to a greater percentage of employees. But sort of the big takeaway from all of these numbers is that when you add up how much parking is here and compare that to how much parking you are required to provide per the county zoning regulations, there is approximately 1,700 excess parking spaces on the site. So, there's 1,700 spaces that are not required to be used based on what's there. And so that really sort of gave us the idea that redevelopment of the parking lots and into something new could really be affected. One of the things that we looked at, as I mentioned, is a typological study of different types of government centers. So we looked all around the country, and generally you can put them into maybe 3 different categories. There's some that are purely a government center. That includes services that are essential to the jurisdiction, government offices, public meeting space, memorials, city halls, civic space. These are really strictly government center, government focused. There is a category of government centers and civic centers that also really start tending more towards the civic side, which you might also find in addition to the government offices and services, educational uses, maybe some religious uses, museums. Sorry, my cat walked behind my screen and shut off my monitor. Performance spaces, and sort of other public uses. And then there are a growing number of government centers that fall under the typology of being really government and mixed use together, which includes things like retail and residential, integrating public transportation, offices, restaurants, retail, recreation centers, things like that. This is an example outside Atlanta in Alpharetta, Georgia. They have the police headquarters, the town hall, and the public library integrated into some other offices and multifamily residential, in addition to retail and parking, retail and parks, I should say. So we took all of this information and using the county leadership committee, which is a group that we've been talking to multiple times over this process, said, well, if you take kind of these 3 typologies and we think about them kind of in a low intensity and a medium intensity and high intensity, created a matrix of potential options and sort of came around to studying these 3 that are outlined in red boxes as sort of the 3 types that we were going to study for this project, which is really taking the existing government center building and just kind of enhancing it, making it better and bringing in some additional uses, creating a government and civic center, which brings more cultural and educational uses on site. And then under the mixed use idea, kind of, again, kind of a middle intensity, what we were calling the transit ready mixed use government center, that really looks at bringing in the most amount of uses. So we have all of that. Then we kind of distilled into what might be the vision statement for the entire campus, right? And sort of what we came up with, talking with employees, talking with the planning department, talking with the leadership committee, is that the purpose of this is to envision a Fairfax County government center that's going to be a new model for mixed use government function and design, really with the key goals of delivering efficient and equitable access to services and opportunities within an integrated mixed use setting, looking at what is the best use of the campus, maximizing the potential, and really making a government center campus that embodies the county's ideals for the highest and best uses of delivering services, ideas about planning and development, ideas about transportation and the environment. And then sort of all of these ideas would be placed within a public realm with walkable streets and paths, a pedestrian-friendly place that that can deliver all of this. And then, as I mentioned, that is sort of the overarching idea that talks about what is the vision for the place. And then 3 different ways that we said we were going to look at it under the Enhanced Government Center, the Government and Civic Center, and the Transit Ready Mixed Use Government Center. And we'll get into these in a couple more slides in more detail. So I don't think I need to read these all out to you now, but this will be recorded. So this then is taking sort of some of the initial analysis we did on the site, looking at the surroundings, looking at the trails and the access. And this is kind of a summary of what the opportunities could be, which really are, to improve pedestrian connectivity and safety, enhancing the crossings across Government Center Parkway that would be useful both for employees that are crossing from both sides of the campus across Government Center Parkway, and also for people that live in the surrounding communities that may want to cross into the Government Center to utilize the services or amenities or open spaces. When we were touring the site, there's a bus stop here, but there's no crosswalk, and there is, a informal path that has been worn into the grass back into the neighborhood. So certainly a great number of people are using that as a crossing. And so trying to improve that and increase the safety for all the users around there is one of the big ideas. This portion of the campus here, this kind of long, skinny, undeveloped area is actually a remaining portion of the Manassas Gap railbed. And so, another opportunity here is to, do some educational and interpretive elements that talk about the history of the site and the history of Fairfax County and Virginia and the country for that matter. And then, that's kind of, I don't know if you can see it on the screen, the red asterisks. I think creating a way to link all the different parts of the campus together with, public art and branding and signage that really makes the whole thing feel like it is connected. Connections to the north are another really important part of the ideas we came up with, right? There is the potential future metro station, so really facilitating connections from metro down to the site was important. We're showing a couple dashed lines here crossing the Stream Valley going up to Fairfax Corner and up to the future metro station. I think, or we believe that greater connectivity is important, but I think it's still undecided sort of what exactly that connectivity looks like, if it is only for pedestrians or if, one is vehicular. I think that's part of what we are still studying. And then, so we really enhancing this north-south connection. This takes that same idea, it kind of zooms in a little closer just to see it more clearly. I'm not going to, I think, repeat everything we've already talked about, but kind of the big ideas for the framework, maintaining the important central axis of the green space that leads to the front of the park, the front of the government center, redevelop surface parking lots into blocks, create a park, study infill on parking lots, and then study creating new connections to future transportation and surrounding amenities. Along with that idea is also improving off-street trails. There currently is some trail networks that continue all off to the north and the east. And so getting a crossing either up and over Monument Drive, or because of the grade separation, there's an opportunity maybe to go underneath Monument Drive, but really connect into all of the surrounding networks as much as we can to improve access and recreation and pedestrian activity. So the first one we're looking at is the Enhanced Government Center. So some of the things that we're going to be looking at here, I think it's important to note that, we have to draw something to understand it. We have to draw something to study it. None of the plans we're going to be showing are necessarily are explicitly not set in stone. They are sort of an imagination of what might be here based on the specific goals of each of the 3 types. So this is looking at additional government offices, maybe some healthcare uses, outdoor performance, parks and environmental features. All of the three plans that we're going to be looking at today also are based on this same framework that we're talking about. The framework is really, based on preserving the existing green space and utilizing the parking lots to create development blocks, and then filling in between those with a variety of uses. One of the goals is to come up with a framework that is flexible enough that it could work under a variety of conditions, right? I mean, I think, nobody knows the future. And so we want to make sure that whatever we do could work or could be adapted no matter what happens. But sort of the big ideas here, additional government offices being filled into the blocks, some on-site retail and commercial uses. This is certainly not intended to to compete with Fairfax Corner or the mall, more for people that live or work in the area. If you work here and you wanted to go get some coffee or have lunch or have some kind of daily convenience services, is sort of the idea there. We think there's a great opportunity to also focus on community health with, this is shown as a potential for a medical office building. I think certainly a need for that, and a great focus of the government center being a focus on health and wellness as well. The large Crescent Park up front has been kind of reshaped and redesigned to create another public gathering space. These plans are kind of high level. We're not really getting into a lot of the landscape design, but the concept here is that, it would be lined with retail on the sides, have some additional amenities in the park. You might imagine, a cafe or an ice cream shop. I think similar to what you might see in the Mosaic District, if you're familiar with that. Some programming opportunities for children and other sort of active events. Because of the topography of the site, it does slope down to the Government Center Parkway. So sort of one of our initial ideas was, a sloping hillside that's already kind of rounded might be a good outdoor space for performances or for gatherings, meetings. Certainly there is maybe an idea to be said for noise coming off of the road might be a problem, but as I mentioned, these are kind of high level ideas. Programming behind the government center, we're also looking at, is there room for things like a dog park or for a much larger playground or sort of outdoor areas. This brown color is the multifamily that's currently under construction. There is parking provided underneath the buildings and also in sort of a large new above grade parking structure. We're saving some of the ground here, illustrating it as a surface parking lot, sort of as temporary parking for some of the county's motor pool or bus uses, but might be redeveloped in the future. Again, parking also underneath the government center building, and then parking on street and but really unchanged over on the west side of campus. So all of this adds up to about 2.4 million square feet of programming, including both existing and new stuff. On the site, this is a view of what it might look like in 3 dimensions. Sort of the other thing we were really focusing on was maintaining the government center as kind of the primary focus. So not having buildings that were taller or overwhelming the government center. So I think in all of the schemes, we've tried to keep things to at the same height or maybe a little lower to really maintain the importance of the original function of the site and its importance in the plan and the urban design. The Government and Civic Center, I know I said at the beginning that we were looked at 3 plans. We actually have kind of 2 variations for the Government and Civic Center, based on some feedback we got from the community and from the leadership committee. So this looks at some additional government offices, maybe an expansion of the library, or an educational building, community college, or a satellite campus, and then a focus on recreation. So the blue buildings again are government offices. So adding a little bit more government offices, saving spots for civic uses on the south side here. This is illustrated as an expansion of the library and perhaps an educational building. On the north side here, this is a recreation or a wellness center. So indoor pool and gymnasium, health club, that sort of thing, as sort of a public or a civic use. And then we've also looked at introducing some additional multifamily uses, some additional multifamily here on the north, looking out over the park, and then starting to look at locating buildings on the west side of the campus here on Random Hills Road, really across the street from what is also some existing housing and multifamily housing. So kind of making a good neighbor, creating a more friendly face to the government center that improves the connection both physically and visually as you're arriving to the government center from the west and coming in here. Here we had talked about at a museum or some other kind of educational use that might be a good focus on local history, Fairfax County history. There's the Manassas Bed Rail Gap, which we're also suggesting be turned into an outdoor interpretive learning activity as well. The framework is essentially the same in these plans. So still the same big ideas of maintaining this large central green space, currently, used for gatherings, protest events. One of the things that we are suggesting is, right now the landscape design has a single row of shrubs kind of running down the middle that bifurcates the central green space. And so we would suggest that the government center redevelop that into sort of one contiguous green space. So, each of these squares or rectangles is more useful, really has a stronger identity and is more useful for people that would be using them for those purposes. I did not mention this on the first one, but it's actually the same in all of these. We've also suggested locating the county's electric vehicle charging center over to this parking lot. It's kind of juxtaposed right next to where the county has fuel tanks for refueling their other fleet vehicles. So I think having an example of sustainable transportation and electric vehicles kind of out front when you come in, next to the other refueling station, is, I think, a good idea. So, the county currently has plans to build that in the parking lot. And so we are saying that sort of those same uses can be accommodated here, which would allow sort of whatever happens in the future to develop without interfering with the planned installation of electric vehicles. In 3 dimensions, again, showing the civic buildings, the community college over a library, the health center, government offices, and housing. So when we first presented this scheme to the county leadership committee, we got some feedback from members that there was a need for greater active recreation, that sort of in their in their feedback and sort of what they were looking at, there was not enough facilities for sort of larger scale recreational activities. And so we said, well, let's take this same idea, come back, look at it in a slightly different way. So this then integrates this really large purple building as more like a field house. So sort of a full large scale indoor gymnasium with sort of all the other attendant rooms that would come along with that for health and wellness and recreation. So built on top of again, a large parking podium. If anyone is familiar, this is sort of roughly a little smaller, but modeled on the field house at George Mason University. So if you're thinking of something that scale, but a little bit smaller, that is what we're looking at in 3D, you can see how, you sort of have the large, big open spans built up on top of the parking podium. And then this also flips the site for more housing and services from the backside down onto the semicircle and the public park. So the final of the three typologies we looked at is the transit-ready mixed-use government center. And so this one really is, I think, the most intense with the greatest amount of mix of uses. So it still maintains as its core identity the government center and government center offices, but starts looking at adding other commercial uses, things like offices. You might imagine some co-working spaces or a business incubator. If you are, trying to start a new business and you're located right next to the county building where you might need to go to talk to someone or get permits, I think there's a lot of synergy with kind of an entrepreneurship center and co-working space. Additional food and beverage uses and the most amount of residential. So sort of the other differentiating factor between the three typologies is sort of solely really government focused, with the exception of the buildings that already exist, to much more fully mixed use. So what you're seeing here is some additional government offices. This is the one plan where we looked at the idea of taking a cue from the original 1986 master plan, and these pads being preserved for future expansion, that you may want to look at locating additional government offices back there on these pads that continue to shape the space. Otherwise, it is similar in terms of the overall urban design framework, but with the integration of more multifamily housing, filling in the streetscape, creating sort of a double-sided town square, green park, really active uses that brings you from the street all the way into the site. All three of the frameworks also utilize this idea, but we'll talk about it specifically here, that in addition to the vehicular network and the sidewalks, there really is a secondary network of green spaces that connects through each of the blocks, creating internal green courtyards and greenways that link all of them together. The current building that's under construction has a sort of a walkway and green spaces that are inside it, so that would continue across through a green pedestrian connection to a central courtyard, coming back out to the main green space and leading back to the road. So the idea that sort of these blocks maintain kind of a fine grain and pedestrian scale that creates, once you're inside them, really nice pedestrian scaled places that are also nice places to be. Excuse me. And then in 3 dimensions, again, sort of a rough model looking at what that might look like with expanded government center uses on the backside, and really mixed use office, mixed use government buildings, and mixed use residential lining the main street. This building's currently under construction, is not mixed use, so we're not showing anything there, but really creating this continuous string of ground floor retail that leads you all the way in, does a lot to help sort of the ground floor vitality and placemaking of the experience when you're here. I think we're getting close to the end, and then we'd love to get some feedback on this. One of the important things we looked at is comparing the amount of green space amongst the 4 scenarios. Say, as a note, right, we're not counting every single square foot of green area. Certainly there are a lot of sidewalks that have tree pits and green areas, smaller green areas. This is really counting up just sort of the main framework and figural spaces, whereas sort of the smaller spaces more or less would remain unchanged. But so the current government center parkway, current government center has about 64.6 acres outlined and colored in the green. The enhanced government center This is 65.9, so a slight increase. The big part of that is replacing surface parking lots with development with those sort of internal courtyards and greenways. Increases the amount of green space, decreases the impervious area among those. The government and civic center takes it up even a little bit more, 66.1 acres. The transit-ready mixed-use government center, 64.3 is, maybe a little bit less than what's existing. I think the main difference there is that this is the one scheme when we were considering, is it appropriate to build some things behind it, as was originally envisioned. So I think that's the big reason why this one has a little bit less, but in general, they all are kind of in the neighborhood of maintaining open space. The other way that we talk about comparing places is with FAR, acronym that stands for floor area ratio, which essentially is you divide how big your building is by how big your site is, and that gives you a number that describes how much stuff you have compared to how big your site is to put the stuff on. Kind of speaking. So, a 1 FAR, if you were to imagine just like a flat square site, you'd have a 1-story building that filled your entire site would be a 1 FAR. A 2-story building that filled half your site would be 1 FAR. A 4-story building that filled a quarter of your site is 1 FAR. So it does not necessarily tell you everything about building height, but it really is a way just to talk about the amount of stuff that's there versus the size of the site. So all of these obviously are an increase over the existing government center, 0.6 FAR, and that number is calculated on what is inside the areas that has been outlined with that dashed red line. So if we were to include all of the open space, of course, that would reduce the number, but trying to compare apples to apples. So 0.64 FAR for the existing government center, 0.78 FAR for the enhanced government center. We talked about 2 different variations for the civic center. They're pretty similar, but that's why this is 0.87 to 0.89. Depending on which one, there's a slight difference. And then really the transit-ready and mixed-use government center is 1.0 FAR, which is, if you're familiar with Fairfax Corner to the north side, sort of 1 FAR is what this parcel is planned at for its allowed density. It's not fully built out yet, and there still is a lot of surface parking lots on site, so it's not a direct comparison if you were to go there today. But I think it's comparable in terms of sort of a maximum development density that you might find in the core of this area that Ryan mentioned at the beginning. This just takes all 4 plans, compares them together, seeing the total amount of program for each, and existing, new, the amount of parking that is required and provided in all of these. Again, these are all parking numbers based on zoning code, not necessarily based on an analysis of how many people are using the site. I think we all know that things like remote work and people working from home, return to work policies make it hard to directly estimate exactly how much parking is used, but sort of as our baseline, we're using the zoning requirements. I know these are a lot of numbers. It might be hard to read, but this will be posted on the project website, as Ryan mentioned. So if you want to get into any of these numbers in more detail, you can do that later once everything is online. So that is hopefully a pretty good overview of the 3 scenarios. And we are now looking to hear feedback, what people think, what we got right, what we got wrong, what sort of the vision for the place is based on the people here in the virtual room with us. I believe Ryan is going to be moderating. He has access to people's questions.
Yes,
And
thanks, Tim. Yeah.
And I can flip to any particular slide if necessary, or we can
Mhm.
kind of just leave up the summary for discussion.
Great. So what we'll do here, just to kind of put some order to this, if we could all, if you wanted to go ahead and speak and ask a question or provide a comment, if you would please raise your hand. If you use that feature, we will take the folks who have raised their hand. We'll take those in the order that they're received. And then if you don't feel like speaking and you'd like to type your question or your comment instead, we can use the chat function, and we're looking at that as well. So anything that you put in the chat, we can all see that and we can respond there also. I know it's a lot of information. It's a lot to digest, and certainly this is not your last opportunity to provide input. And so, like I mentioned, we'll have this online at in the survey, and you can provide any comments there. But does anyone have anything that they'd like to maybe start the conversation off with? Do we have someone who's brave? Now, I think for me, when I look at these different scenarios, and each of them do really represent a change to the government center. And I think about how I use the government center and how I envision myself in each of these scenarios and what I might want to see. So I see that Carrie has her hand raised. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well.
I was just
Thanks for
wondering
joining us.
how long are you going to be taking feedback? Like what's the timeline? What's the planning process?
A lot of it really depends on the feedback that we receive and what we've been receiving to date. But we would like to keep the survey open for the next few months into the fall, so we can continue to get that feedback as we're refining the concepts. And so it's we don't have a close date for that, but we'd like to keep it open for the next few weeks while we do that.
Do you have a start date for construction?
No, none of this is
Okay.
planned in terms of construction. For that to happen, there would still need to be a comprehensive plan amendment for this site. We would need to have rezonings on the site. We would need to issue building permits and do all of the construction pre-activities. And so this isn't a typical development case where we have a developer in line that has asked us to look at something. This is very much a high level visioning idea type of exercise versus something that's more planned out and more specific.
Yeah, I would just tack on to that, right? That the county is currently updating the comp plan for this area.
Mhm.
And so what we're doing as a study and a visioning exercise is going to inform the decisions that the county makes when they update their other plans. But nothing that you're seeing here today is a plan necessarily,
Okay.
right? These are, scenarios that we're envisioning to get feedback to help us take the next steps to update the county's plans.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I think there's a question in the chat.
Yeah, hi. I was just typing a response to that. I see Nat in the chat has asked, I joined a little late. Where will people park at the government center? Is a new garage being built? Will the parking garage be open to employees only, or will it also be open to the public? Those are all great questions, Nat. And the short answer is that we will provide the right size amount of parking for the activities that are going on. So we have employment activities, people coming to the government center to work. We've got voting, we've got public meetings, we've got constant people coming to visit and do business. We've got motor pool operations. So all of that needs to have the right amount of parking on the site. And so the idea here isn't to lose parking for the sake of losing parking. It's to really take any excess that we might have and be able to transform the site into more of that transit ready or that mixed use environment that's walkable and relies more on parking structures rather than surface parking. But we do see some surface parking on the site as well as needed.
Yeah, but in general, yes, parking is being provided in new parking garages, in the existing parking garages, and on street, and in some small surface lots in a few of the plans. So all of the plans, as I mentioned, right, we have the parking calculations based on code. Even with sort of everything we're doing, sort of all of the plans still end up providing more parking than is required per zoning. Because one of the things we heard throughout this process was, well, if I'm coming here on voting day and you only have the minimum amount of parking, it's going to be a problem. Or if I'm coming here for a county festival, you know, the minimum parking isn't going to cut it. And so all of these are building into them, quote, extra parking, more than what would be required per code. So that has been taken into account. But yeah, all new uses and all existing uses are having their parking accommodated on site.
Becca's got a question here in the chat. Do we know the number of multifamily units that would be created with each plan? We have some numbers here on the slides that you kind of see some square footage and some things of that nature. But just given the high level of detail in this plan, we don't have a specific number of units because we just don't know what the market demand is and what the market is going to do and what the needs of the government center are going to be 40 years from today. But certainly, at least when we have square footage here, we can kind of estimate how big those units might be. The idea here is just more so to provide a framework to say what could be possible under these different levels of intensity. But I will say that when we do look at things like a transportation study that's currently going on for the wider Fairfax Center area, we do need to pin down some numbers there, and we've made some assumptions based on these numbers. But again, nothing has been, there's no way that we can possibly predict how much housing there might be a demand for, or anything like that, at this stage. I mean, it would really take looking into this from more of a downstream development perspective here.
Yeah. What I'll add is, in the charts, you can either see it now or you can look on the website later, right? We do have a total square footage of the theoretical yield. To Ryan's point, 330,000 square feet could be 330 units if they are roughly 1,000 square feet average per unit. If they're bigger units, it's fewer. If they're really small units, it's more. So, the total number, I think, to be determined based on market demand. But, what we're showing here is, 300 to 750, 760, depending on kind of unit size and development.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the really important questions here. We know that we have such a housing shortage and housing problem through the entire kind of economics spectrum, but also through the workforce and affordable housing kind of price points. And you see when you look at these plans up on the screen, the brown represents that multifamily. Obviously, the one with the most is the one on the right. But this is an opportunity to be able to bring more of that very much needed residential, but in a way that places it in a location that's near the government center, that's near some existing retail mixed-use development, near a future metro station, et cetera. So there's a kind of a trade-off and a balance, right, between all of these. And I think that's sort of one of the things that we're looking for input on.
Jacob's got a question here I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I so apologize, you all. I'm on the bus, so I'm just coming home and listening in, but just wanted to say thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm joining from the Coalition for Smarter Growth, so really appreciate the effort to address the housing shortage as well as the location efficiency piece of placing some of these units in such a well-located spot. So thank you for addressing my question.
All right. Well, thanks, Becca, and I appreciate you joining us, even if it's from the bus. That's some dedication there. So, thanks. Jacob's got a question here about the, yes, he says, I live in a part of the county where there are plans to tear down a high-rise office building to develop for all residential. And yes, we're definitely seeing that in this current market climate. There's definitely more of a demand for residential uses and converting office uses into residential uses. And so, yeah, we are seeing that as a general trend in the market. And certainly we're seeing that here in the Fairfax Center area as we're doing the broader study. If the question here is more toward the mixed use space, has there been a study done to see if there is a need for the extra 100,000 square feet of office space. And I guess the quick question to that would be no. That's of course that would be something that would be determined kind of as the county's needs evolve and as we start looking at how much space might be needed to accommodate, say, for example, if there was an opportunity to bring some of our existing offices that are offsite, maybe there's an opportunity to consolidate those here on the campus. That may create some more efficiencies in how the government operates. But you know, the 100K is really it's an idea of what we think, you know, what our current needs are and what we think for the future we might need, but that figure is not set in stone. I think the broader concept here is the idea of perhaps increasing the amount of office space if it's needed, and kind of where that might go within the framework. So Mike's got a question here in the chat about have traffic impacts been considered by adding this much residential in the area? The Monument Drive and Government Center Parkway aren't really designed for high volumes, especially now that they narrowed the parkway to one lane. Yeah, Mike, that's a great observation and great question here. We do have a transit and a transportation study in the works as part of the larger Fairfax Center area, and so the numbers that you see here, you know, help to inform that analysis as far as, you know, how much residential might be appropriate, or how much office might be appropriate, that sort of thing. The idea here is that we want to kind of see what the capacity of our existing road networks are, and you know, prior to the arrival of Metro in the area, which again may be 40 years off, we want to see kind of how we can grow within that existing capacity. And certainly, you know, if the analysis comes back and says that this is far too much residential or far too much office, then we'll need to adjust the numbers accordingly. Generally speaking, though, in that overall scenario, we're seeing, you know, to my earlier observation of Jacob's comment, is that we are seeing a lot of conversion from office space to residential, and generally speaking, residential uses tend to generate fewer traffic trips. And so just in terms of timing on that, again, that study is currently underway. We expect to have some results to be able to share with the community, most likely in the you know, first half of 2026. And so stay tuned there, and we will you know, provide those as soon as we have those available. Okay, if anyone else has comments, we will you know, we'll stay on and be here just as long as you need us to be. You know, I know there's a lot to digest, but if you have any comments, feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself and you can talk, or put it in the chat, and we'll answer it for you.
Well, while we're waiting for that, I just throw one thing in here. You know, I remember when I grew up in Fairfax County, and I remember when the government center used to be over in the city of Fairfax. And one of the things that was nice there was the fact that you were next to all of those other mix of uses, right, in a walkable place. And I think as the government center moved out here and looked into the future, right, and said, where's the growth happening? Where's the future metro station? That was a key consideration in location, et cetera. I think that this opportunity for a master plan for the government center really provides the opportunity to make this into a destination, right? A place where where all the people come together, certainly like today for government purposes, but in other ways also. So I just think it's a great opportunity for the community to be able to kind of weigh in on, well, what should that destination be and what should that look like?
So Nat's got a question here in the chat. What is being built right now on the roads to make everything one lane? Nat, I'm not really sure whether you mean that generally speaking or whether you're talking of a specific location. But if I understand correctly, maybe you're talking about more of a okay, restriping to include bike lanes. Okay, yeah. So that's yeah, those are some traffic calming measures that were implemented in along Government Center Parkway. Generally speaking, traffic calming is you design a roadway to limit the speed of traffic. It makes it safer for pedestrians, makes it safer for bicyclists. You include that pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure to really make the road more of a multimodal facility. And I don't know here. I've got, let's see. Ashley, I don't know if you're still on the call, but I don't know if you can provide anything from a transportation planner's perspective. Let's see if she's still with us.
Hey there, good evening. I don't know too much about the project itself, but if there was striping put down the road, Ryan would be correct. That's just a way to slow down some traffic as well as make the facility a little bit more accessible and safe for bicyclists utilizing that roadway.
Mm-hmm. Good, thanks, Ashley. Jean's got a question. The more housing that is built, the more residential support services that are needed, schools, daycare, medical services. If you are increasing housing, you are also increasing schools, and are those costs considered, included, and supported? Yes, Jean, I can tell you that as part of the, we are considering all of those things, and as part of the wider Fairfax Center area study, we're looking at kind of what the overall proposals are for the area and what the impacts might be on our public services, whether that's our roads, our schools, daycare, parks, and open space, and all of those different ways in which we measure community need and community impact. We will be having a meeting of our next Fairfax Center Area Task Force in the coming. We're just scheduling this now, but it's going to be before the holidays. It could be in say before Thanksgiving or perhaps shortly thereafter. But during that time, we'll be presenting kind of where we are with the Fairfax Center area as a whole. It will include what we've heard tonight, as well as some additional information, and we'll start to share that impact analysis of what the effect might be on our community services. So stay tuned for that. That's in progress. We'll be ready to share that shortly.
Hi, Ryan. This is Mary Cortina.
Hi, Mary.
Hi. A question for you. The field house seems very large in the scale of those blocks, for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other is that, we have such a backlog of Fairfax County Park Authority, rec centers, as well as other facilities. And I'm talking about like 40-year backlog. So either other, facilities get sidelined while this comes to the front, or it's a really long time before we get something like this. And so in the interim, typically before things are built, they would have like an interim park. Is there any thought about something like that? And
yeah, that's a great idea, because you're totally right. Is that some of these facilities could be years out, and that it involves a process that I guess for everyone on the call, we would need to first plan this. We would need to rezone this. We would have, if it's a capital, project, it would be placed on our capital improvements plan for the county. And so this is going to take a long time to really realize this vision. And Mary, you bring forward a really good point about kind of what do we do with the space in the meantime. It seems like right now, not having gotten into the implementation of this whole vision yet, there may be some appetite to like continue the current use as it is until we have a firm plan in place. But I think you bring forward a good point, is like kind of once we kind of have decided what we are doing with a particular lot or a particular area of the campus, kind of what do we do in that interim time. And so yeah, certainly parks are certainly something that would serve that interim use. I think it's a great idea. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but also just to think about those interim uses. I know this happens in other areas of the county when we're doing phase development. And so a park will be planned. But if you're looking at, say, this field house long term, how does that connect to these other open spaces that are on your framework? And should it be a temporary green space park in the interim? How does that relate to these other parks? The way I see it right now, it's a pretty large area, and it's maybe a bit separate. And that might be fine. Clearly, I guess the leadership have said that they're not interested in the fairs model, which we know that was one of the main uses of this in the past. So are they thinking that they don't want to host those kinds of community events here anymore?
Well, I know that the kind of the large scale, like the fair, for example, I know that that use has, there's also a fair over at the Fair Oaks Mall. And so they were kind of looking at that in terms of, in the area, is it, and they really looked at this question in some, detail, is kind of from a policy standpoint, is it that we have a large open space that we use, sometime, and we have it reserved for that purpose, which is kind of what we're doing today, or do we really utilize the site to its, and develop it further to provide for some of those other community services such as housing or additional, health and wellness facilities, recreation, and so on and so forth. And so that's really been a policy consideration. But from a broader planning perspective, the scope of the Fairfax Center area is more of a tighter development pattern, kind of more urban in nature, more mixed use and walkable. The direction that we received from the leadership committee was sort of to pursue that vision over something that might be more of like an open space, or like a fairground, for example.
Yeah, that's what I heard you say. So
yeah.
So that concept is really out. If some time in the future they wanted to be able to have the community gatherings, is that really restricted now to the ellipse in the back, or the, as you call it, the protest strip down the center? Or is this idea of having these community gatherings on the government center sort of out the window? I mean, even in Mosaic, we have no room at all, but we managed to have quite a variety of things going on.
At least as an interim condition, we currently have the surface parking lots, and we until there's a real plan to develop those, that certainly having that space for large community events in the parking lot would certainly, I would imagine, continue. One of the challenges that we discussed with the ellipse is that it's a wonderful open space, but it's very hard to access and get to.
Right.
Like, for example, if I'm going to a concert, I need to enter the building, I need to go down the stairs and then out the door. It's not something that unless you're living right there in the area, you're not utilizing that space on a daily basis. And so I think that some of the concepts here, where we're pulling out some of that open space and making that more centralized green area in the front of the building, and then maintaining that larger linear park along the central axis there, that's going to really help to activate the space and provide some more accessible recreational opportunities that don't currently exist today.
Okay. Well, I would just see if you can consider the opportunity of flipping some of these spaces so that you're combining your park space with your open space and your active park space. I know in Reston, with the Reston North plan, they did that so that there's, the combination of them allows for more flexibility. And then just one other comment, which I know came up at the other meeting, and that was just the reconsideration of 2 vehicular streets that go through that RPA. Trying to minimize the impact to that while trying to connect this campus, I think is a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that we showed that as some possible connections, but certainly, we're going to talk about what that might eventually look like, how many connections there would be, and kind of what the character of that would be if it's going to be implemented at all.
Yeah, and when you're comparing the green space too, I mean, that is real quality green space that has biodiversity. And
Yeah.
when you flip back to that other image, if you could go to the slide of the green space. So it appears that you're counting like the interior of the new apartment building, and that's built on top of a parking space. And so the green space there is really stormwater planters. It's not really green space in the way that you're thinking. So I don't know that, you know, it's open space, but it's not green space per se. It's pretty hard. It's all, you know, concrete and hard surfaces. It's not impervious.
Now that's
Yeah,
that's a good observation. We can you know, update those slides.
If I could speak back to one of your earlier comments about the open space, the one thing I think we should point out here is that there is a good amount of green space in front of the government center today. It's just not designed in a way that makes it very usable.
Right.
And so I think that one of the things that we're recommending is that it kind of be reconfigured. The other part about the flexibility for kind of larger events, it's not really a street, the drive that goes by the government center on the west side of the government center, right? You don't really have that vehicular access. One of the things that we would recommend is that has vehicular access so that there's a connection around the perimeter of this. And what that would allow you to do is actually close the streets that are on that long linear green in front of the government center, right? To then have a bigger kind of activity there. And then also structuring this crescent green on the left in a way that, again, today it's kind of somewhat visual space, right? It's residual space, but rather make it something that's very usable. And so you could actually close off those streets and have a kind of much larger event happening there, but still have access for vehicles around the perimeter coming into the parking on the edges. So I think I think it's something that allows for a lot of flexibility in terms of sizes of events and that kind of thing. But I think it does need the right design in order to make that happen.
Yeah, that park in the front, I mean, that's where they had the donkey jump off the diving board, the sort of dog races in the fair. It was not really the primary place where people congregated, and because of the terrain as well. So it is kind of a challenging place to have that as the gathering point. But you're right, it is a larger area of green space. Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Hi, Stuart's got a question here about the point that issues with accessing the ellipse behind the government center. Is there an opportunity to re-envision or reconfigure that access? It appears that the plan with the dog park and playground might address this. Yeah, Stuart, that's a good observation, and we've had some things in there where we're kind of activating that space, making it a little bit more publicly accessible. One of the challenges here, and I'll let either Tim or Eric on the call kind of go into some detail on this, is kind of the access to the site is limited due to some topography and things like that, where kind of getting around the building to that ellipse without going directly through it, that can be challenging.
Yeah, so you know, we were showing, I realize it's a small screen, so maybe it's hard to see, right? So we were showing things like an enhanced connection coming up from the sides leading back in here. So, you know, you're correct. There is a stair sequence. There's a topography. So there's, you know, stairs and or ramps that would lead you back. But we certainly were thinking about improving that connection back there. But, you know, it still is, you know, you still are kind of coming around the side, coming around the back of the building. It still is hidden, but we can make it better. But you know, we can't really change where it is, unfortunately.
Hi,
I
we're
think
happy
you're
to
on
take
mute.
more questions and more more feedback here, of course. We'll continue to stay on if anyone has anything. I am going to kind of, as we're kind of in a lull of the conversation here, I'm going to go ahead and share what I had up earlier in terms of the access to the survey and access to the feedback mechanisms that we have here. You've got my let's see, I'll just have that. And you can see here, again, I've got a link here to our survey page. That's you'll see the concepts here and you're able to answer some questions on those. It is very free form, and so you can see how other people are commenting, what people like, what they don't. There's a cool feature where you can like each other's comments, and so things will get upvoted and get more you can kind of see how other people have reacted to things. It's a really good tool that we're using. And then of course, any of the materials, the videos, slides, all of that will be on our county's website. And so if this is your first first meeting that you've been with us, you're welcome to go back and look at prior meetings that we've had with our county leadership team, our Fairfax Center Area Task Force. And we have an archive of documents there on the entire planning study for the Fairfax area, which really goes back until about 2013 or so. So there's a long-standing study. It has evolved over the years, and so all of that information is there on the webpage. Yeah, thanks, Becca. I appreciate your comments, and I'm pleased to hear that you're excited by the potential of the transit-ready and mixed-use plan. That's good feedback for us, so thank you. And thank you, Keisha. I see that you've posted in the chat as well, so thank you for being here. And with that in mind, I know that we technically have until 9 o'clock here for feedback and things. If for some reason you need to leave, I know that the evening is getting a little late, so certainly we don't want to keep you. So if you want to leave and come back to the survey at a later time, certainly you can do that. We will be continuing to take comments there. Jean's got a good comment here in the chat about some of the most successful recreation areas are actually just open spaces that nearby residents can walk and easily and go play and hang out. I would much prefer to not have that big field house and instead have an open area with a perimeter crushed stone walking running path around it, surrounded by trees and benches, similar to the DC Mall. That's a good comment, and that's certainly one thing that we hear quite frequently from the public is that the county is lacking in just open, unstructured areas for what the park authority would call like an open play area. And so, things that aren't really dedicated to one particular purpose that can serve a number of needs, whether that's relaxing on the lawn or throwing a ball, that sort of thing. And so there's definitely we do know that there is a need for those in this area and throughout the county. So again, while we still have some people on the call, I just want to thank everyone again tonight for coming out to this. I know that your evenings are valuable, and I really appreciate that you've spent the time tonight to talk with us about this set of proposals, share your feedback, your concerns, your ideas. This has been very helpful to us. Our next steps will be we're going to take this feedback. We're going to kind of spend some time assimilating it, spend some time seeing kind of what we might be able to address, what we might be able to incorporate into the plan. We will be meeting again with our county leadership team at a date to be determined. But then really the next milestone for the Fairfax Center area is that task force meeting that I mentioned earlier, which will take place in the next, by the end of the calendar year, I would say is the time frame for that. We just have to get a date set on the calendar there. But in that meeting, we'll go over kind of the broader planning context for the Fairfax Center area, share some of those community impacts and some of our analysis at the staff level, and really be able to share some of the ideas that have come forward from the community about how the Fairfax Center area will develop with the idea that this future metro station would be kind of at the center of that. So again, all of this is helping to inform the larger planning context of the area, and we really appreciate everything that we've heard so far. We highly encourage you to stay involved, whether that's through our online meetings or our in-person events, which we'll have more of as the project progresses. So thanks again. We really appreciate it, and I wish you all a very, very good evening.
Thanks so much, Ryan.
Yes, thanks, Mary.
Thank you to the team for putting this on tonight. And I appreciate all the residents who've come out. If you continue to have ideas, you can contact me personally, but it's much better to use this website, and then the whole team has the information if you think of anything else. And we're joined here. I see Marcia is on the line, Marcia Pape Daniels from the supervisor's office. Marcia, did you have anything to say?
No, I've just been listening.
Okay.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks everyone again, and with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and end the call. But I do want to make sure that everyone's had an opportunity to get this survey link, and that will be posted on our project website as well. If you can't remember this long URL at the bottom of the screen, just do a Google search for the Fairfax Center Area Study, and this should be right there in the list of your results. And so again, we look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to seeing you throughout the next steps of the process. And I just want to say again, thank you for all your thoughtful comments that we've received so far.
Thank you. Good night.
Mm-hmm.